바로 시작이 이렇게? 아직 설명도 못했는데. 오늘 할 것은 What Remains of Edith Finch 라는 건데, 이게 공포 게임인지 뭔지는 약간 감이 안 잡히는데, 크리스마스니까 뭐 큰맘 먹고 해보겠습니다. 뭐야?
A lot of this isn't going to make sense to you, and I'm sorry about that. I'm just going to start at the beginning, with the house.
집부터? 그래픽이 엄청 좋은 건 아닌데 뭔가 느낌이 있네요.
I lived here until I was 11, but I wasn't allowed inside half the rooms. Inside the mailbox were bills from 7 years ago, marked urgent, open immediately. I hadn't been back since my brother Lewis's funeral.
오빠가 죽었나봐요.
In her will, my mother left me a key, but didn't tell me what it unlocked. Maybe she thought I'd know. Or she thought that the mystery would be enough to bring me back.
열쇠를 갖고 옛날 집에 온 것 같아요. 뛰는 거 없나? 뛰는 게 없어. 사슴. 순록인가?
This, even after I inherited the house, I never thought I'd come back to it. But now I had questions about my family that only the house knew the answers to.
저게 제 집인가봐요. 옛날 집.
The house was exactly like I remembered it, the way I'd been dreaming about it. As a child, the house made me uncomfortable in a way I couldn't put into words. Now, as a 17-year-old, I knew exactly what those words were. I was afraid of the house.
들어가 봅시다. 이건 뭐야? 그레이스 포틴 믹스. 열어. 여기 문이구나.
I hoped the key might unlock the front door. It didn't. Looking in, I felt like the house itself had been waiting for me.
어떻게 들어오는데? 계단으로 갈까요? 아무것도 없어. 열쇠는 뭐, 어디다 쓰는 거지? 집 열쇠가 아니잖아. 나 왜 이렇게 뚱뚱하지 근데? 17살이니까 공부 스트레스를 먹는 걸로 쳤나.
Crawling through the doggy door used to be a lot easier when I was 11.
집으로 들어왔어요. 차고인데 차는 없고 뭐. 차가 있네? 엄청 부자였나 봐.
The night we left. For the first time in years, I felt like I was home. But instead of a family, there were just memories of one.
가족 사진인 것 같죠, 이거?
Like how after Lewis started working at the cannery, we all got sick of eating
가령
salmon.
루이스가
Except our cat, Molly.
잠깐만. 얘가 루이스인가? 집이 엄청 커요, 일단.
Nothing in the house looked abnormal. There was just too much of it. Like a smile with too many teeth.
야, 이 책을 누가 이렇게 꽂지? 인테리어인가?
Edie told me once that every Finch who ever lived is buried somewhere in the library.
묻혀있다, 여기 누가. 열지는 못하나요? 이런 큰 집에서 왜 다 남기고 이사를 간 거지? 돈이 많으니까.
After Milton disappeared, Mom sealed up all the bedrooms. Then Edie retaliated and drilled peepholes.
아니 근데 제 이름이 너무 많이 나와요. 나중에 갈수록 헷갈릴 것 같은데 그런 건 너무 질색인데 조금 걱정되네요. 칼빈, 그레고리. 보니까 1915년 태어났고 1917년 태어났고 1976년 이게 다 제각각이에요. 여긴 또 1950년에 에디가 아까 전 할머니였죠. 그래서 사실 뭐야 이게 뭐야 이게 뭐야 이거 나홀로 집에.
Whenever people ask me about my family, the first thing they always want to know about is Barbara.
봐봐라. 뭐야? 코드가 연결됐어요. 어차피 정비는 이거 끝났다 했는데.
Mom must have locked the third floor stairs on the night we left.
Edie's father Odin built the original house.
어?
I spent a lot of time playing in Great Uncle Walter's room.
월터가
I think
진짜
my mom
알아서
sometimes regretted not sealing it up.
무슨 고래랑 이쁘게 되었네요. 뭔데 빛나고 있어 여기?
Louis told me there were secret passages, but I never believed him.
아까 준 열쇠 엄마가 줬던 열쇠. 여기서 쓴 거였어.
Turns out, my mom was really good at keeping secrets.
오. 뭐야? 땡겨.
Now it was time to find out what my mom
헐.
wanted for you.
저. 야씨 개 재밌는데? 갑자기 팍 재밌었어.
Reading this, maybe it sounds like I had a plan. But I had no idea what was behind that door.
안녕하세요. 어딘가요 여기?
Just like I had no idea where all this was gonna lead.
일단 핑크핑크한 방이네요. 굉장히 이뻐요.
I grew up looking at Molly's room through the peephole.
몰리의 방이에요.
Molly's gerbil had a tiny bedroom with its own even tinier gerbil cage.
아
I
몰리인가
got the
보다.
sense Edie had spent a lot of time here before my mom sealed the doors.
할머니네 거의 나한테 1937년. 1934년에 태어나서 1947년에 죽었네. 엄마 한 13살 때 죽은 거 아니야 그러면? 캠핑인가 했고요. 쭈가니가 있네요. 스폰지밥을 좋아했나 보요. 얘도 막 곤충을 왜 이렇게 징그럽게.
December 13th, 1947. Dear Diary, I'll be gone soon, but I wanted to tell somebody about what's gonna happen. It started when Mom sent me to
병에
bed
걸렸나?
without dinner. I woke up and I was starving, so I looked around for something to eat.
저빌모.
The gerbil food was dry, but I didn't mind it.
어? 뭘 먹은 거야? 당근 먹었나?
Mom, can I come out now?
애 밥은 좀 먹여주지. 뭐 하는 거야? 야, 먹을 게 없어가지고 토끼 먹이를 먹는데.
My Halloween candy was all gone. I kept eating and eating.
어? 야, 치약을 그거, 밥 먹이라고, 씨. 야, 나와봐.
Then I heard chirping outside my window.
잠깐만. 야, 저게 쥐적인 게 문제가 아니야. 나와보라고. 밥을 먹여야지. 밥을 먹여.
It was a barn swallow going back to her nest. I reached out for her. And suddenly,
뭐야?
I was a cat.
응? 텔레폰 통화? 이 자식이.
I tried to be quiet, but the bird was really scared.
여기서 어디로 가야 돼? 여기가? 와, 일로 와. 일로 와. 그냥. 와, 스파이더맨. 거의 스파이더맨.
Mom and Dad didn't even look at me.
저 엄마 아빠가 봐.
I jumped and I almost got her.
뭐지? 상상인가? 아니면 진짜인가? 뭐야 이거?
I could tell she was getting really tired.
일로 와.
Now
저거라도
I was
먹어야지.
up in the big tree. I promised Dad I wouldn't climb it anymore. All I cared about was eating that mama bird.
아, 고양이가 아니라 이게 진짜로 사람인 채로 올라가는 건가?
I gobbled her up,
으,
and suddenly I was an owl.
이거 뭐야?
First, all I heard was the wind. Then I heard little teeth nibbling in the grass. Rabbits.
토끼다. 가봐. 징그러.
I imagined his face looking up
Ugh.
and seeing mine through my talons. I swallowed him up, and I didn't chew one bit. Then I flew off to find something bigger. Mama rabbit.
엄마 토끼.
She was almost too big to carry. I started choking, but I couldn't stop eating. And suddenly, I was a shark.
뭐야? 뭐야 이게? 예? 팔딱팔딱. 예? 팔딱팔딱.
I rolled off a cliff and into the ocean. Now, I was hungrier than ever.
물고기 먹어.
I wanted fat, juicy seals.
물고기 아닌가?
I tore off her flipper, and it tasted really good.
일단 먹읍시다 일단.
Grabbed on tight. When I was so hungry, I jumped out of the water. When I opened my eyes, everything had changed.
뭐야? 이거 뭐야? 뭐야 이거? 뱀이야? 뱀이 됐어요?
Now I was a monster, and I smelled people everywhere.
사람 먹는 거야 이제? 어? 진짜
I
사람
was
먹나?
big, but I moved real quiet.
깜짝이야. 씨. 먹었어.
I wanted to stop, but also I didn't.
Drunken sailor, what's really doing? Drunken sailor, riding
아, 어떡해. 일단 먹자. 불쌍하지만 내가 배고프잖아. 나는 아직 13살인데 너네들이 좀 살만큼 살았잖아. 그 정도는 어찌 생각할 수 있지. 열어. 들어가. 그냥.
After the last passenger, I was still hungry. And across the water, I smelled something new. Something I had to have, so I swam towards it. I slithered onto the sand, and the good smell went into an old pipe.
뭐야, 이게. 이거 뭐지? 공정한 장치인가? 아, 반대로 가고 있어. 아, 반대로 가고 있어. 아, 너무 조작감이 너무 짱나요, 진짜. 안 보여가지고.
I got closer and closer.
어디에요? 몰리. 내 방인데? 몰리방인데? 뱀이 나를 먹은 거야 그러면? 그래서 죽은 거야? 그래서 몰리가 13살에 죽었나?
All of my stomach started growling. And suddenly, I was me again.
어떻게
I held my breath for a long time, but I couldn't hear anything.
심지어 몇째 뱀 있어?
It's waiting for me to fall asleep. But it's not going to wait much longer. It needs to feed, and we both know I will be delicious.
이렇게 해서 죽었어. 뱀한테 먹혀가지고.
I'm not sure if I believed all of that, but I'm sure Edie would have.
무슨 말이지 이게? 죽음을 약간 희화한 건가?
I can't describe it, but I felt like some part of Molly was still here. This will be obvious later, but my mom never told me any of these stories.
Edie would have, but Mom didn't like bringing up the past. Though, when we adopted a stray kitten, she was the one who named it Molly.
에디가 제 할머니죠. 왜 할머니인지 뭐 그냥 할머니인지 모르겠는데.
I spent a lot of time in Great Grandma Edie's room.
중조 할머니였네.
Her room was like a museum.
에디.
For 500 years, the Finches have been famous throughout Norway for their fortune
핀치 가문.
and misfortune.
우리 가문이죠. 핀치 가문.
Odin Finch buries the latest victims of the family curse, his wife Ingeborg and their newborn son.
오딘 핀치가 이제
On January 7th, 1937, he set sail with his family and his house, hoping to leave the curse
But
behind.
40-foot waves off the coast of Washington send the house and Odin to the bottom of the sea.
집을 배 위에다가
Odin's daughter Edie, with husband Sven and baby Molly, step ashore on their new home, Orcas Island.
Odin Finch is the first to be buried in the new family cemetery.
His daughter Edie is already dreaming of a new Finch house. Whatever's wrong with this family, it goes back a long ways.
여기가 중조 할머니 방이에요.
When Edie told people Sven was killed by a dragon, she could also have said he was building a dragon-shaped slide that collapsed. She could have, but she didn't.
세상인데요, 다. 새를 엄청 키웠다.
Louis died a week before we left, but Edie had already started to memorialize him.
Even in her 90s, sometimes Edie seemed a lot younger than my mother.
The only trace Grandpa Sam's first wife Kay left on the house was the pink bathroom.
아, 여기 또
There's a secret in this bathroom.
무슨 비밀이 있다.
It's in the last place you would look. It isn't in the cupboard. It's hidden in this book.
이 집은 뭐야 대체? 겁나 큰데 그 큰 게 다가 아니야. 계속 이어져 있어.
From the paintings on the wall, it was clear my brother Milton had been here before me.
또 뭐야? 또 다른 사람 방이에요?
I knew Grandpa Sam had a twin. And that he never talked about him. I guess my grandpa didn't like history any more than my mom did.
켈빈 할아버지의 다른 형제인가?
How I Want to Remember My Brother by Sam Finch. The thing I remember is that when he made up his mind, that was it. My brother said he'd die before he ate another mushroom, and he did.
야, 신발이 앞이 너무 큰데? 달랑거리는데 지금? 달랑달랑.
At Barbara's funeral, we swore we'd never be afraid again, and he wasn't. I think Calvin always wanted to fly.
Sam! Calvin! Dinner's ready! Coming!
But that day, he finally made up his mind to do it.
왜 그래? 침대에서 나가는 거 아니야, 켈빈?
I told him going around was impossible. Maybe if I hadn't said that,
비싼 나레이션인가 봐요. 지금 이건 그냥 타고 있는 거 켈빈이고.
I'm not gonna tell you again!
maybe he'd still be here. But I doubt it. I think he'd already made up his mind.
어? 지금
That's what I want to remember about my brother.
내가 누르고 있어도 내가 너무 무서워. 아, 진짜 위험해. 아, 왜 하는 거야, 이런 짓거리를. 아따. 아따. 어떡해. 어떡해.
The day he made up his mind to fly, and he did.
아. 그럴 줄 알았어.
Calvin's story felt strangely familiar. When I was younger, I remember trying to do the exact same thing.
아, 왜 다 이상하게 죽어.
After the funeral, Edie roped off Calvin's half of the room.
Mom said Grandpa Sam enlisted at 18 and never set foot in the room again.
와, 씨. 대박. 아, 뭐야, 이게. 다 내가
The
올 걸
passages
알고
were a
미리
pretty
만들어 놓은
tight
건가?
fit. They'd obviously been built for smaller hands and bellies.
여기로 가자. 깜짝아.
Growing up,
봐봐라.
I always thought of Barbara as a child star. I never thought about how hard it must have been for her afterwards.
봐봐라, 망인가 봐.
Of all the stories people wrote about Barbara's death, I'm surprised Edie saved this one.
죽은 걸 왜 복원해?
Old Jack here with another ghastly tale inspired by America's most unfortunate family. I'm calling it The Surprise Ending of Barbara Finch. As a child star, Barbara was famous for her scream. Now at 16, she was all washed up, a has-been. But in a lucky break, she'd been asked to perform her signature scream at a local convention for monster movie fans. It was just the boost her career needed.
미안해, 케빈이.
Unfortunately, her scream hadn't aged well.
Getting better. I think you just need the right motivation.
Her biggest fan and current boyfriend, Rick, was about to demonstrate when...
Now
뭐야?
that was a great scream.
It was Barbara's father, Sven. He'd slipped into a table saw and had to be rushed to the emergency room. So Barbara got stuck babysitting her youngest brother, Walter. Her convention comeback was cancelled.
남자친구 저
Okay,
새끼는
I'm hearing frustration.
장인어른이
but
잡혔는데.
I'm not hearing terror. What if I tried?
A gang of hoodlums in Halloween masks have been terrorizing Orcas Island tonight. Police are urging residents to...
That came from the basement.
You're right. Also, I loved your delivery on that. Why is your basement door locked?
Because my dad likes making puzzles and secret passages. There's a key hidden in the music box. The secret is to keep winding and winding until finally the key pops out.
Thanks, babe. I'll be back in a sec.
20 minutes later, Rick hadn't
여자친구가
returned.
지하실 확인하러 갔다가
So
안 들어왔어.
Barbara went to look for him, right on cue. She reached for the music box. And as she wound the key, she listened for Rick, but the house was silent.
내가 움직여야 돼? 이 부분 뭐야? 어?
She found Rick's crutch and imagined the worst.
어? 피 흘려. 아, 나 너무 무서운데. 지하실에 뭐
The gang's
있다고요?
leader is the infamous Hookman killer, Dr. Carl Hamill, who impaled and then ate his family 10 years ago tonight.
튀어, 씨.
The old fridge rattled and grew still.
뭐야? 잠깐 와봐, 와봐, 야 와봐. 와보라고. 이거 내 남자친구.
Rick?
아니 미친놈.
Barb, relax. I was just trying to scare you to help you find your scream.
Well, I'm not scared, Rick. I'm furious.
Then act furious. All I'm getting from you now is that you're hurt and confused and you...
She threw him out, but she kept a little something to remember him by.
Barb, have you seen my other crutch?
And she was still holding it when she fell asleep watching the late picture show. Hours later,
Barbara! Walter, what's going on up there? Ah! Okay, I'm coming up, but if this is a trick, you're dead, Walter.
아, 또. 안녕? 도장계 집에 왜 있는 걸까? 아, 할로윈이라구나, 할로윈. 아. 그래. 재밌다. 재밌어. 그만 나와야지. 어차피 그만해. 그만하라고, 씨.
Walter vanished, but his bedside radio was still on.
Orcas Island police describe the man as 6 feet tall, with a steel hook for a hand. Residents are urged to lock all doors and windows and notify the police of any suspicious activity.
Barbara turned, saw the Hookman, and was speechless. He was quite smashing.
잘한다.
And he couldn't get enough of Barbara.
Okay, Barbara, there's gotta be another way out of
내
here.
통로 있잖아, 통로.
That night, she played her part beautifully.
나와봐.
Molly's door hadn't been opened in years. The hinges groaned.
와봐. 이 자식. 싸가지 없는.
He wasn't moving.
그렇지.
She sensed the story might not be over yet.
확인 사살 해야지. 빨리 가 빨리. 아, 뭐 없어졌잖아. 확인 사살을 해야 된다니까 빨리.
Had vanished. She listened for his breathing, but all she heard was
누구야?
someone at the door was
빨리
dying
눌러.
to speak to young Barbara. At the door, she heard whispering. It was coming from inside the house.
빨리 튀어 나가 빨리. 아, 나 저거
Oh dear.
나가라고. 저런 할 줄 알고 나가라고. 아,
The monsters had come to surprise her. From Barbara,
몰카였어?
dream come true. Then she saw what kind of monsters they were, and she realized what was about to happen. She was going to be famous. And
뭐야?
with her final breath, Barbara Finch gave the performance of her life. I wasn't there myself.
뭐야?
But I hear Barbara was magnificent. Poor girl. She had a taste for stardom. But unfortunately, so did her fans. Of course, the police blamed it all on poor Rick, who disappeared the same night. And little Walter, hiding under his bed the whole time. They took it all pretty hard, but that's another story. As for Barbara, tucked inside the music box is all they ever found of her.
오 씨.
Her ear.
아 뭐야?
Now that's what I call a real eerie tale.
이딴 걸 왜 보관하고 있어? 고인모독이잖아.
Edie told me all Barbara wanted was to be remembered, as absurd as that comic was. Maybe what Edie saw was a happy ending.
걔한테 죽은 건가? 어떻게 죽은 거야?
I guess now I know why Mom didn't like me playing with the music box.
여기 아니야. 떨어진 게 고친 디테일 봐.
It's funny. All those times I played with the music box and never found the basement key.
그거 우리 보면
I saw Edie sneak down to the basement once, carrying packages.
I thought maybe she was hiding presents.
It turned out she was
아
hiding a
여기
lot
이렇게
more than that.
숨었던 거 있고. 야 여기 진짜 개쩐다 이 집.
I remember asking Mom once about where Walter had gone. She said after Barbara died, he got as far away as he could.
야 집 벙커도
There's
있어?
a pattern in all these stories. I think it's that none of us has gotten very far.
아니지 다 뒤졌다.
Goodbye, everyone. I can't believe I've been down here for 30 years. On that first day, after the shaking started, I didn't think I'd survive a week.
뭐지?
But after a few days, I settled into a routine.
That's what kept me sane. Having a schedule, living for today. I always expected to be dead tomorrow.
모차 할아버지 이야기죠?
But if you
봐봐라.
wait long enough, you get used
봐봐라
to
지금 진짜 진짜 밑하네.
it. Even a monster on the other side of the door starts to feel normal. Almost friendly. And then one day, everything just stopped. Whatever that thing was, it was gone. Maybe it got tired of waiting. Or maybe I just got tired of being afraid. It's been a week now, the longest in 30 years. I'm
사실
done
뻔히 여기
waiting.
있었나?
I have to leave. Well, I still can. I know it's out there somewhere. Whatever killed Barbara and Molly and Calvin.
뭐야?
Maybe this is all a mistake. But I need to stop living the same day.
Huh?
Even if it kills me. Whatever's out there, I want you to know I'm ready for it. I'm going to appreciate all of it, especially the food. I don't mind if I only have a year left. Or a month. Or a single week. I'd be happy with one real thing. I can already imagine the sun on my face.
야야야 잠깐만.
Walter died when I was 6. I can't believe my mom never told me he was down here.
아니 무슨
I'm sure my mom was trying to protect me. Maybe she was afraid I'd end up like Walter. But if she never told me about an uncle under the house, I can only imagine what else she was hiding.
어떡할까?
I
여기
don't want to
뺐구나.
make the same mistakes she made. Trying to bury something that's still alive. Now that there's only one of us left, or maybe 2, I thought it was time I heard the stories for myself and found out what happened to everyone else.
형 가족들
But now I'm worried the stories
가족
themselves
중에 나만 산
are the
거야?
problem. Maybe we believed so much in a family curse, we made it real.
월터 죽었어. 다 죽은 거야 그럼 나 빼고?
I don't know if I should even be writing this. Maybe it'd be better if all this just died with me. But I thought you should know about your family.
난 누구한테 글 쓰고 있는 거지?
And the history you're a part of.
그게 뭐가 있어요?
Though to be honest, I feel as lost as you probably do right now. I think the people in these stories believed them, for what that's worth.
And when you look at the house, that history of imagination and stubbornness and madness, any of it seems possible. I think we've been surrounded by death for so long, we've just gotten used to it. What kind of family finishes building a cemetery before starting a house?
계속 죽었나 보다, 가족들이.
It's
뭐 다
embarrassing
죽어?
for me to admit this, but
나이 들어서 죽은 것도 아니고.
the pet cemetery may be more uncomfortable than the human one. 3 of the gerbils are mine, and 2 had been my fault. Sven built the house, but it was Edie who designed the cemetery. I'm sure Odin's monument had been Edie's idea. My mom was always trying to move on, but for Edie, the past never went away.
무슨 동상도 짓고 돈은 진짜 많은가 보다. 뭐야?
Edie said she dreamed about the old house every night.
아 이거 아까 전에 그 뭐야? 태풍 때문에 가라앉은 집이구나.
Edie's side was always easier for me to understand. But the older I get, the more I can see where my mom was coming from. Things I wish I could ask my mom now. Part of me thinks this is what she wanted all along. For me to come back someday and find everything out for myself. But looking back on it now, if she told me there was going to be so much climbing, I never would have come when I was 22 weeks pregnant.
어? 임신? 야 그러면 야 이게 아까 기고 막 이랬는데 나중에 와야지. 다 끝나고 뚱뚱한 게 아니었구나 그냥.
I never met Grandpa Sam, but I think he and my mom had a lot in common. They were both pretty intense.
오 뭐야? 뭔가 산할아버지. 아까 켈빈 동생이었어?
Dawn, I promise, you'll never forget this weekend.
Yes, sir.
These memories are gonna last a lifetime.
What?
Perfect.
It's gonna rain the whole weekend, isn't it? I will never forget this weekend, Dad.
That's the spirit. Smile, Dawn. Okay, got it.
I'm gonna take some pictures, okay?
Just be careful. The camera's older than you are.
본인 누구야?
Definitely should not have drunk all that coffee.
Hey!
That's a keeper.
I'm just saying, I'm not always gonna be here, Dawn. You'll need to remember this stuff, if you want to survive.
I'll be fine, Dad.
You know who else thought he was gonna be fine?
Some guy who died.
Dawn, I'm being serious.
I know, Dad. You're always serious. Doesn't being out here make you want to chill out?
To tell you the truth, I haven't been out here in 20 years.
아 저거?
Before you take the shot, let me get a picture of it.
Dad, I...
Just breathe. Let me get behind you.
Do I have to do this?
Dawn, you don't have to do anything. But if you want to survive... Great shot, Dawn!
울잖아.
I'm proud of you, Dawn. Always remember that, okay?
울잖아. 아, 하나는 나 정상이 아니다. 어디로 가야 돼? 지금 제가 조정하고 있거든요? 아, 여기구나.
Dad, it's twitching. I think
That's
it's
totally normal, Don. Just focus on the camera. Try not to think about.
Dad!
어떡해. 저렇게 죽었어?
Of all these stories, that's the one I wish most that my mom had told me. Instead of hiding from death, Sam seemed to go out of his way to meet it.
아, 여기 있다.
After Sam died, my mom and Edie got really close. They'd both lost a lot.
제발 자연사 좀 해, 얘들아. 왜 이렇게 죽는 거야? 그래. 1년 안에 죽었네, 얘는. 아유.
Dear Kay, do you remember the way Gregory used to laugh when he thought he was alone? Like something funny was happening, but only he could see it.
뭐야?
I think he saw things the rest of us don't.
Time over, Gregory. It's time to... Hold on, sweetie. Hello? Sam, I told you I don't want to talk right now.
뭐 개구리 제가 움직이는 거예요? 응?
What his world was like. It reminded me so much of Calvin. Lost in his imagination. Whatever it was, he saw.
뭐 애기 상상속인가 보다. 올라갔다.
Sure made him happy.
이거.
How silly it sounds.
뭐 해야 돼?
I worried about a baby being too happy,
거품놀이.
but I could feel him slipping away.
Sorry about that, Gregory.
I know you did everything you could. Maybe if I hadn't called that night.
전화 깼어. 전화 맞춰야 돼.
I wish he could have told us about the world he saw.
야, 잠깐만. 야!
There's so much I don't understand about Gregory.
어떻게
About everything.
익사한 거야? 그래, 그래?
I know what happened wasn't your fault.
빨리 들어, 빨리.
I'm sure he's happy. And he'd want you to be happy too. Good luck, Kay. Love, Sam.
이렇게 애기도 죽었어요. 다 죽어, 다 죽어.
I can't imagine my mom ever writing poetry, and yet
A poem for Gus, who always said the wedding was a bad idea. Our father never hit us kids, at least not very hard, before the day my brother said with teenage disregard that he'd be dead before he'd see a wedding in our yard.
연이네.
father made him come, of course, but Gus stood far apart, just flew his kite and bottled up the storm inside his heart. Talked him out of there, but though he'd never met her. We don't need a stepmom, were the words that I now pronounce you. When the time for photos came, Dad ordered him to come here. But Gus declined, and as a sign held up his middle finger.
아니 미친. 아니 누가 아빠한테 병멍도 컨셉.
The wind picked up, and panicked geese appeared and quickly went. But all the humans did that day was go inside the tent.
태풍 왔나 보다. 태풍 와서 다 죽었나 봐.
Rain came down in buckets then, but no one seemed afraid that nature might destroy the tent our dad had crudely made.
야, 이렇게 날씨 안 좋은 날엔 집에 들어가 있어야지.
Thunder sounded much too close and full of angry power. But all my father said to this was, make the music louder.
집에 들어가라고. 어.
I wish that I could truly say I thought about you on that day. Out there on the beach alone, just you, the wind, the sea, and foam. But I didn't. Until we found you.
She never talked about him, but Mom told me once if I was a boy, they were going to name me Gus.
다 죽어 진짜 다 죽어. 어떤 집안이 어딨어.
My mom moved up to the loft after her brothers died. At the time, it was as far away as she could get.
임신했다면서 왜 이렇게 누워있어.
She spent a summer building houses in Calcutta, where she met my dad, Sanjay. My mom moved to India a week after graduation and got a job teaching English. Louis was born a year later.
루이스 오빠.
When my dad died, I don't think Mom knew where else to go.
아빠도 죽었어.
I'm sure Edie was happy to have her back. And for a while, things were good. Almost normal. But it didn't last.
집에 교실 있어. 대박.
The beginning of the end was Milton's 10th birthday, when Edie gave him a castle.
선물을 성을 줬어. 아니 사모면은 조금 뭔가
I think Edie
애꼈어야지.
was happy to finally have another painter in the family. Milton Finch in The Magic Paintbrush.
오 이런 거 좋아. 그림이 사람 움직이네요. 그냥. 얘가 밀턴인가 봐요. 문을 만든. 뭐야? 뭐야? 죽었네 밀턴도?
I was 4 when
어쩌다
Milton
죽었네?
disappeared.
어쩌다 죽은 거야 지금?
Mom spent months searching for my brother. Then she sealed the doors.
실종되나 봐.
Whatever Milton had found in the house, Mom didn't want it getting out.
실종된 줄 알았는데 집안에 있었다고?
Mom definitely blamed Edie, but I think Louis blamed himself. After he graduated, he just spent more and more time in his room. Until Mom got him a job at the cannery.
루이스.
Everyone always told me to stay out of Louis's room. Except Louis.
깜빡한데. 전기 끊었다면서 왜 빛이 나고 있어?
Louis's room smelled very
very familiar. That part of him lived on. Lewis and I spent a lot of time playing games together, but he was surprisingly bad at them. He died a lot.
Dear Mrs. Finch, as Lewis's psychiatrist, I can understand your desire for an explanation. As I see it, the trouble began in January, shortly after we convinced your son to seek treatment for substance abuse. Newly sober, I believe Lewis first noticed the monotony of his daily life.
아, 통조림 공장? 통조림 공장인가 보다, 여기. 뭐야, 근데 너무 무서운데?
But he withdrew part of himself. In our sessions, I saw the same behavior.
야, 팔 잘리겠다.
His mind began to
저한테 팔 잘려, 이거.
wander.
뭐야? 멀티태스킹 해야 돼? 이것도 제가 움직이고 있는 거거든요, 이것도? 아, 정말, 야, 뭐야, 이게. 아, 너무 힘든데.
He said he started small, imagining a labyrinth. He'd feel his way about. Then something moved. Bats. And toads. And things that have not names. He knew it was all in his head.
아, 너무 힘들어. 여기서도 저는, 아, 너무 힘들어.
But he took it very seriously. I had hoped he'd find himself. But he found something more.
뭐야?
I worried about him then, at the cannery.
아, 일하면서 계속 공상하고 있던 거야.
But he said Lewis had become a model employee. Methodical, tireless, focused.
상상하다 팔 잘리면 어쩌려고.
Like a whole new Lewis. So I let him go on. I even encouraged him. It seemed very promising at first.
점점 통조림 공장이 안 보여.
He'd made a new friend. On the edge of a city he named Lewis Topia. He built the city up slowly, brick by brick. Then he made musicians. And songs for them to play. He talked about starting a band. And he was always humming something. Every day his imagination grew stronger. Cannon. But his chopping was as reliable as ever. Then one day it struck
일은 잘하네, 근데.
That all the cheering crowds, even the stones under his feet, were all in his imagination. So he could do whatever he wished. He held an election for mayor. And he won.
루이스토피아.
They begged him to stay, but his mind was already wandering. It became a game for him.
야, 이제 안 보여. 통조림 공장이 거의 안 보여.
Immediately push on. New Louisville, St. Louis, Minneapolis.
하필이면 이런 일 해가지고.
Even as his mother pleaded with him, part of Lewis kept sailing on.
정신 못 차린다.
In Louisburg, he heard rumors of a
여왕,
handsome queen.
헬성 퀸.
The queen was on her own quest for
빛나는 문지개.
radiant rainbows.
뾰로롱.
Followed the sound of her
시타를.
electric sitar.
일렉트릭 시타. 야, 알아본 거야, 옆에?
His chase led him to a golden palace east of the sun and west of the moon. Even then, his logic remained sound.
야, 이제 아예 안 보여. 홍조롱 공장 아예 안 보여. 어떡해.
He knew the world was all in his imagination, but he was so proud of having created it. In his own eyes, he'd become something greater than a king. For someone who'd never known success in the real world, I think it was overwhelming.
병원 데리고 가. 왜 일을 시키고 있어,
The real
지금.
Louis was not the one chopping salmon, but the one climbing the steps of a golden palace. My imagination is as real as my body, he told me. It was hard to argue with him.
뭐야? 홍조롱 공장 아니야?
Began to forget the world we know. I think it pained him to remember Louis, the cannery worker.
뭐야, 쟤? 루이스다, 루이스.
He began to despise the man with a royal contempt.
와. 정신 못 차린다고 병원 데리고 와야지. 왜 여기서 일을 시키고 있어? 좀 이러고 있잖아, 지금.
I still thought I could save him. Even after he said he was being crowned king over all the lands of wonder. The palace would be packed with his companions.
다 먹혔어, 이제. 망했어.
Including the wise Calico who'd insisted on advising him.
몰리.
His queen waited, holding his crown. There was only one thing left to do. Bend down his head.
어떡해? 야, 잠깐만, 얘 단두졌잖아. 야, 안 돼.
And the rest I think you know. Mrs. Finch, your son was a kind man who will be missed by all of us who knew him.
아, 미친.
My brother was really cool.
루이스 이렇게
I wish you
생겼어?
could have met him. On the way back from Lewis's funeral, my mom told me to start packing. She waited until the day before we left to tell Edie. I'm not sure if she wanted to make it easier or harder. I wish we'd stayed. But I understand why we left.
엄마는 계속 죽으니까 떠나고 싶었던 게 아닐까. 여길 떠나야 돼. 아무리 커도 다 뒤지는데 이걸 여기서 어떻게 또 살아.
But it had to end one way or another.
어디
All
여기?
that's left now was to tell you about that last night.
내 방이다, 내 방. 신발 벗고 올라가.
That whole last day, Edie just watched us pack and didn't say a word. Until supper, when she raised her glass and said,
To our final night together, and all our final nights apart.
Grandma, you know what I said about alcohol. Some of your medications are very
Edith,
specific.
I left a present for you in the hallway. Why don't you go open it? The grown-ups have to argue now.
I'm sorry, you're right. We're all leaving tomorrow. Let's just enjoy our last...
I'm not leaving.
Edith, you're excused.
the power had been
아무튼
shut off that morning.
애기랑
But
엄마랑
Edie always had plenty of candles.
저랑 같이 있는 것 같아요. 맨 마지막 날 밤. 다 죽고 3명만 남았을 때.
When my mom said the library, I don't think she knew about the other entrance. Or that Edie had a key to it.
그러니까 그 많은 사람이 다 죽었어.
Isn't going to end when you leave the house. Edith has a right to know these stories.
My children are dead because of your story. I think it's best if Edith and I leave tonight. We'll have the nursing home send a van for you in the morning. Okay?
Dear Edith, there's so many stories I wish I could tell you, but there's only time for one. This is about what happened on the night you were born. That night, the tide went way, way out. It was the first and last time I ever saw the old house aground. There'd been an earthquake out in the middle of the ocean. They called it the lowest tide in 1,000 years. God, it smelled awful. No, I've seen that house every day of my life. But I never thought I'd go back to it. When the fog rolled in, I lost my way. I got turned around. For a while, I wandered. I started seeing things.
쌤 죽은 사슴 아니야?
Things I'd forgotten had ever existed. But when I saw them, they felt like old friends. That night, a lot of things came back to me. Or maybe I came back to them.
옛날에
Things I can't explain, but that I need you to try and...
Edith, what are you doing in here? It's
아니 엄마
Edith!
진짜 절정 순간이다 지금.
I kicked and screamed, but Mom dragged me to the car. I never saw Great Grandma Edie again.
중재 할머니 맞구나.
The next morning, the band came to pick her up. She was already gone. After that, we moved around a lot. We both tried to make the best of it. A few years went by.
인들레시.
My mom didn't like to talk about it.
힘들어.
But she started getting sick a lot. The rest happened pretty quickly.
어떡해. 엄마도 죽어?
She got better for a while. And then she didn't. And then I was alone. The last Finch left alive.
앞으로 다 죽은 거네.
Until I found out about you.
아, 이거 자기 아들한테
I'm
쓰는
still
거구나.
not sure what to tell you about all this.
임신했으니까.
If we lived forever, maybe we'd have time to understand things. But as it is, I think the best we can do is try to open our eyes. And appreciate how strange and brief all of this is. This journal was supposed to be for you. But now I hope you'll never see it. I just want to meet you and tell you all these stories myself.
뭐야 지금?
But I
애들
guess
아픈
if you're
거야?
reading this now, things didn't work out that way.
심장 소리 들려.
This is where your story begins. I'm sorry I won't be there to see it. It's a lot to ask, but I don't want you to be sad that I'm gone. I want you to be amazed that any of us ever
에디스도
had a
죽었어?
chance to be here at all. Good luck.
아 죽었네 에디스도. 아들 빼고 다 죽었어. 아니 이게 뭐야 이게. 재밌었고요. 크리스마스 감성은 아니긴 한데 그래도 뭐 재밌게 했습니다. 뭔가 좀 스토리 다 읽었는데도 찜찜한 게 있네요. 기분이 썩 좋진 않아요.